Hey everyone, this is Nathan here from NQ Productions, and welcome to a brand new ranking video. Last time I did a ranking video on this channel, we looked at the 8 Alvin and the Chipmunks movies and ranked them from worst to best. Not only was that video a lot of fun to make, but it also did really well, and because of that, I wanted to make another big ranking video for you all. And for this one, we're going to be taking a look back at all of the animated films made by Warner Animation Group. Warner Animation Group, known nowadays as Warner Bros. Pictures Animation, is one of the newer mainstream animation studios, which was created all the way back in 2014. And I find their film lineup to be very intriguing since there's a lot of variety with their work. You've got a bunch of Lego movies, some DC related films, wacky slapstick comedies with good messages, and a certain movie that feels like you're being tortured while watching it.
Stop it, please, I beg you!
So as you can see, we've got quite an interesting selection of movies to talk about today. 10 movies to be specific. Now, before we get things started, there's a couple of things I want to mention. Number 1, this video will contain spoilers. If you have not seen any of the Warner Animation Group movies, you've been warned since I will be spoiling the plots of all 10 movies. Number 2, this ranking will be from best to worst rather than worst to best. Why? Well, let's be honest, you all know what number 1 is going to be on this list. So rather than ending the video with a super obvious choice at the top, I'd prefer to get that obvious best film out of the way at the start and then build up to the worst movie at the end. So yeah, that's why this is a best to worst ranking rather than the other way around. And lastly, number 3, this ranking is just my own personal opinion. So let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts are on all of the Warner Animation Group movies. And while you're down there in the comments section, you can also hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's free and the support is greatly appreciated. Anyways, without further ado, this is every Warner Animation Group movie ranked from best to worst. See, I told you the number 1 spot on this list would be obvious. The Lego Movie is easily WAG's magnum opus and is by far the best Warner Animation Group movie. Oh, and from this point onward, I'm going to call Warner Animation Group WAG. It's just easier to say. Anyways, the Lego Movie has so many incredible aspects about it that all come together to build, get it, and craft such a phenomenal film that's bursting with passion, creativity, and effort. Starting off with the visuals, they're fantastic, perfectly capturing the look of good old stop motion Lego videos when in reality, it's actually CGI animation. As a kid, I thought for the longest time that the entire movie was in stop motion, but nope. It's all just really well done CGI that still holds up to this day, and the dedication to make every single element of the animation made of Lego is just super admirable. And this is just the visuals. The movie's writing is just as amazing, showcasing a brilliantly done story of Emmett, the everyman, being told he's the special, and he ends up joining a wide variety of characters to embark on an adventure through various worlds to stop Lord Business from using the Craggle, which is just a glue stick, to conquer everything. What seems like a basic Chosen One styled story on paper is told in such a creative and satirical way that makes it one of the best written films I've ever seen. It also feels like a plot that fits perfectly with Lego, since Lego is all about being creative and using your imagination to make whatever you want. And then the twist of having the events of the film be connected to the real world relationship of Finn and his dad is just so well done. It makes this movie have a powerful message and emotional ending. The film's message reminds viewers that whether you're following the instructions or building something wild and new, there's value in the way you create. That's just fantastic writing in every way imaginable. It also helps that we have a great cast of memorable characters to make this story even better with their fun personalities and satisfying character arcs. Emmett being a super likable everyman who proves how capable he is despite him not being as talented as others shows that you don't need to be the strongest to be considered special. Lord Business is also such a comedic, oppressive villain who provides so many great lines of dialogue. And then you have the other characters like Wildstyle being a great foil to Emmett, Vitruvius being one of the funniest characters in the movie, Batman as the self-centered and scene-stealing egomaniac, Benny and his spaceships, Unikitty, Metalbeard, Bad Cop, all of these characters are so damn good. on top of having great voice acting from an absolutely stacked cast. Chris Pratt, Morgan Freeman, Elizabeth Banks, Will Arnett, Liam Neeson, Charlie Day, Will Ferrell, and so many more famous actors, and they all do a great job with their vocal performances. And they also provide a ton of comedy. This is up there as one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Every joke is hilarious, and there wasn't a single moment that didn't have me either laughing or chuckling. I laughed so much at this movie for its well-delivered and fast-paced jokes. I could name to you all of my favorite jokes, but honestly, we'd be here all day if I did that. Oh, and Everything Is Awesome is a banger song. There's that as well. You see why the Lego Movie is at the top of this ranking? For me, it's not just the best WAG movie. It isn't just one of the best animated films of the decade. It isn't just one of the best animated films of all time. For me, this is up there as one of the best movies I've ever watched. I love it that much, and I'm so glad I got the chance to rewatch it for this ranking video. The fact that the Academy Awards didn't nominate this film for Best Animated Feature or even Best Picture is just embarrassing. I will never stop loving the Lego Movie, and I'm so happy it turned out to be this creative, hilarious, beautiful looking film with sharp writing and deep messages that resonate with so many people, rather than being a soulless 90-minute long toy commercial. Anyways, this movie is absolute cinema. I still can't believe though that WAG made their best film on their first try, and then they never hit those highs ever again. Dang, Warner Animation Group, you fell off.
In the deep dark layer of the Batman.
The Lego Batman movie. This is actually quite the special movie for me since it's one of the very few movies out there that released on my birthday, February 10th. And man, this is one wicked birthday present. The Lego Batman movie is another fantastic Lego movie. And I know I just said that WAG has not been able to reach the same highs of the Lego movie since it first came out, but Lego Batman is the one exception. This film is almost just as good as the Lego movie, only held back by a few jokes that didn't work for me, and Batman having a very tiny amount of scenes where he acted too egotistical for my liking. Other than that, this movie is just as peak as the first Lego movie. It's got the same breathtaking visuals paired up with awesome action scenes and superb choreography. Seriously, the choreography in this movie is fantastic. And it's got the same kind of fast-paced, well-written comedy with tons of nods to Batman's past, as well as poking fun at itself and other brands and movies. The one downside though is... Look, I'm sorry Joker, but your Buttmobile jokes suck. Anyways, what makes the Lego Batman movie reach similar peaks to the original Lego movie is not just the song at the beginning, seriously Batman's song about himself at the start is actual fire, but how this film is basically a character study of this take on Batman, showcasing his strengths and weaknesses and telling the audience through visual storytelling and well-written lines of dialogue that Bruce Wayne is a flawed individual under the mask. The movie dives into his emotional isolation and fear of connecting with others, all without losing the comedic tone of the film. It's a surprising nuanced look at a character often portrayed as this unbeatable menace, and his journey towards embracing family and teamwork by the end gives this film its very well executed emotional backbone. Beyond Batman, the supporting cast brings in a lot of charm and likability as well. Robin is super adorable, I love how dry-witted Alfred is, and Barbara Gordon is a strong foil to Batman's antics. Even the Joker is given a surprisingly clever arc centered on his need to be acknowledged as Batman's greatest rival. Every character feels fun and unique, with just the right amount of balance of satire and sincerity, and I love the overall story. Batman and Robin going to the Fortress of Solitude to get the Phantom Zone projector while Batman interacts with the Justice League is a great scene. I like seeing the DC villains team up with Batman and the gang after Joker talks shit to them, and seeing Joker team up with other Warner Bros. Villains like Voldemort, Sauron, and many more at the end was super funny and didn't feel like shameless product placement, unlike another movie WAG would later make, which, oh boy, we'll get to later. Anyways, the Lego Batman movie is a fantastic Batman movie, Lego movie, DC movie. It's just a great film overall. I'd highly recommend checking this one out if you haven't seen it. And while there are a few jokes that I didn't love and Batman's ego can sometimes be a bit much, the film's heart, humor, charm, and visuals make it a pretty strong standout in WAG's film lineup.
Hello,
I'm Chris Pratt. I'm Emmett Brakowski. And I'm Rex Dangerfest.
Making a sequel to a movie as unexpectedly successful as the Lego Movie is not easy. Did the Lego Movie 2, the second part, end up being a follow-up as good as the first movie? No, but I'd say it's still great overall. The sequel does bring back the same charm, clever humor, and amazing characters from the original. However, it struggles to recapture the same magic, and all of the film's problems tie back to the story. Now, the story itself on paper is not bad. We see the movie pick up right after the first film with the arrival of the Lego Duplo creatures, leading to a Mad Max-style Bricksburg opener. And then from there, the plot turns into an interesting, galaxy-hopping adventure filled with musical numbers, for some reason, alternate timelines, and a bunch of wacky characters from the Sistar system. The movie does try to explore deeper themes, which I'll get to later, but the story ends up feeling disjointed. It juggles too many plot threads and tonal shifts too quickly, making it tough to stay fully engaged. There are good ideas here, yet they don't always merge together smoothly. Also, why did this movie need to be a musical? I get WAG wanted to capture the feel of a Disney movie, but I don't think it was necessary, especially when most of the songs are just okay at best, and that's it. That song that's supposed to get stuck in your head did not get stuck in my head. The song that ended up getting stuck in my head was Quin Whatever I Wanna Be's song. That one was actually really good. Anyways, even with the messy story, tone, and confusing plot, the rest of the movie I'd say is still strong regardless. The visuals still look as amazing as the other Lego movies, and due to the different plot, we explore more colorful and varied places, from the apocalyptic Bricksburg to the vibrant worlds of the Sistar system. And the comedy is still as hilarious as ever, with the same quick jokes, satirical and self-aware lines, and funny visual gags. Though, like the Lego Batman movie, there are some jokes that didn't fully land for me. Thankfully though, most jokes did work for me, which is similar to how I feel about the characters, both old and new. Most of them worked for me, and none of them were bad. It's just that some characters could have used some small improvements. Emmett is still great being this silly goofball now, Wildstyle has more depth, and everyone else who returns is still fun to watch, even though side characters like Bendy and Unikitty don't get as much focus as last time. Instead, we get to focus on the new characters, like Quin Whatever I Wanna Be being this fantastic addition to the cast, especially the subplot where she marries Batman. No, I am not making that up. And Rex Dangervex being this alternate timeline version of Emmett, where he's basically Emmett if he went rogue. He's pretty cool and also has some fun nods to Chris Pratt's previous roles like Star-Lord and Owen Grady. What really stands out though, and what ends up making this film great despite its issues, are the messages. It tackles more mature themes like growing up and learning to share with younger siblings. The story ties together the Lego world and the real world together just like the first film did. And the message about embracing both sides of yourself, creativity and maturity, is very thoughtful. However, the way these themes are shown can sometimes feel lost, but even then, at least the film's heart is in the right place. Overall, the Lego Movie 2, the second part, is a very fun movie with great animation, good humor, likable characters, and stellar themes and messages. I liked this sequel a lot and had a good time with it, but I wish the story was less confusing. If the direction and storytelling was a lot better, we could have had a sequel that's just as good as the first Lego Movie. But at the end of the day, I still think this is a solid 8 out of 10 film, and it was an enjoyable follow-up to the original Lego Movie. At least, in my opinion. You can argue about what I think of this movie in the comments below. But anyways, let's move on to our next movie, shall we?
Mine.
I wasn't sure where Storks was going to rank on this list before watching the movie, but after watching it, it ended up being quite the pleasant surprise. This film has a lot of humor, some sweet emotional moments, goofy and well-made animation, and a fun story, and it ended up being the biggest surprise of the ranking. I was not expecting this movie to be this good. Speaking of the story, you know that famous folklore where storks carry babies? Well, this film takes that folklore and turns it into this interesting premise where storks now run an Amazon-like company called cornerstore.com, and one day a stork named Junior, who wants to have a successful career with the store, and Tulip, an energetic human who grew up in the store, accidentally set off the old baby making machine, and then have to deliver a baby in secret while the big boss of Corner Store, Hunter, tracks them down. This plot does have its predictable moments, sure, but the amount of heart and energy prevents it from being boring in my eyes. Also, this movie has a very fast pace. The dialogue is quick, the characters all act a little unhinged, and the pacing is very speedy. almost too speedy. This movie hardly slows down, which doesn't lead to many emotional moments in the film. But when they do happen, they're very effective, like when Tulip's stork Jasper talks about wanting to take care of Tulip rather than trying to keep her for himself, and when Tulip reunites with her family. It's very touching to see scenes like this, not to mention the subplot involving a human kid trying to get his workaholic parents' attention, adding in more emotional weight. Also, since I've mentioned the names of some of the key characters, let's go over them, shall we? Junior is a solid lead, and I like the bond that he forms with the human Tulip. Tulip is also a decent character who can be a bit too wacky for my liking, but I grew to like her as the movie went along. And Hunter is a typical CEO-like villain who wants everything to stay the same no matter what. There's also a few side characters like Jasper, who provides some added sympathy to the film, Nate, who's a human kid with wild aspirations, and everyone else is just decent at best comic reliefs. Speaking of the humor, that's one of the film's biggest highlights. There are so many jokes that made me laugh, ranging from the goofy slapstick to the actions of the zany characters and the fast-paced gags. My favorite jokes are easily the ones that involve the wolf pack chasing our main characters, Junior and Tulip, where they merge together to be fully functioning vehicles. It's just so fucking ridiculous that it ends up being such a hilarious running gag. And then, towards the end of the film, there's this action scene where these penguins fight Tulip and Junior while they try to take the baby from them, but since they don't want to make the baby cry, everyone is quiet, causing zero sound to play. Oh my god, this scene is fucking comedy gold. And all of this is showcased with some pretty good animation. I like the cartoony designs, the crazy expressions fit the frantic tone of the movie, and it's just a very appealing film to look at. To make a long story short, Storks is a very fun, funny, heartwarming, and well-animated movie. And even though the film can get quite hyperactive, and some of the characters and plot lines could have had some small improvements, I wouldn't mind watching this bizarre and at the same time, adequate and enjoyable film once again. Storks is pretty good, and probably the most underrated movie in this ranking.
Welcome to the Himalayas!
I feel like the only reason people talk about Smallfoot is because of that Zendaya is Michi meme. Such a stupid fucking meme. Anyways, Smallfoot is a good movie. In fact, I'd say it's pretty close in quality to Storks, though I ended up ranking Storks above Smallfoot since I think it has a few more flaws than Storks. Its plot is a bit more basic, its humor is not as funny, and its characters don't have as much depth or emotion. But even with those minor issues, Smallfoot still remains a solid, thoughtful, and fun film. The best part of the movie is without a doubt its themes and messages, showcasing themes about breaking traditions with not following the rules/stones of the Stonekeeper, seeking the truth beyond what you're told, and questioning your view of the world. It's very powerful stuff, and on top of that, its concept is pretty clever, flipping the Yeti myth upside down where Yetis question the existence of humans rather than the other way around. It's all super brilliant. However, I do wish the actual plot was structured better and was less simple. What we get is generally standard and ordinary, like seeing the main character Migo go on his journey without anyone knowing, seeing the hidden truth, the misunderstandings, and the ending where the humans and Yetis make peace with each other. All of this stuff wasn't hard to see coming, but thankfully it is executed in a way that makes this predictable story not too bad, all things considered. Also, the characters are decent. Miko is a likable lead, Michi is solid, Percy, who's played by everyone's favorite actor, James Corden, honestly wasn't as bad as I thought he'd be after he was first introduced, and you do want to see him achieve viral fame eventually. And then the Stonekeeper, Michi's dad, is a really well done character who thankfully doesn't turn into a generic villain. His desire to protect his people gives him a believable motivation, and he ends up not being an antagonist in my eyes. Everyone else in the cast ranges from decent to one-dimensional, but thankfully there's no unlikable characters in either the human town or the Yeti village to me. The last thing I'll talk about is the presentation. The animation is really bouncy and has great character work, though the Yeti designs did take some time to get used to. I do not like how they have no noses. Then the musical numbers didn't need to be there, but they do end up being really catchy and memorable. And then the humor is fine. There's some good slapstick, a couple of funny lines every now and then, and more jokes did get me to laugh than not, but there are also some moments that haven't aged the best. Anyways, in conclusion, Smallfoot is an ambitious movie that has good intentions, and I think it ends up providing viewers a film that, while not amazing, one that can be remembered fondly. It has solid animation, mostly effective humor, surprisingly good musical numbers, and nice messages about questioning what we're told. And despite the basic writing and ordinary characters, this film is one that I'd consider underrated just like Storks, and I think you all should check it out if you haven't seen it. It ends up being a movie I have a lot of respect for how bold it is. That being said, I still don't like that Candy Crush joke.
Update! I'm fast now, but I can't see.
There isn't a whole lot that I have to say on DC League of Super Pets. It's a decent superhero movie that'll give you some entertainment, yet there's nothing in this movie that I would describe as outstanding. I do like the animation, and there are some pretty entertaining and memorable fight scenes, especially the final act, but at the end of the day, the visuals as a whole are just alright. Nothing amazing, but still decent. Same goes for the voice acting. I like all of the performances, and some of the highlights with the voice acting include Kevin Hart as Ace, Keanu Reeves as Batman, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Crypto. Also, like I said in the Lego Movie segment, this movie's cast list is insane, and because The Rock and Kevin Hart are together, there's bound to be some good chemistry with their characters. And yeah, Crypto and Ace bounce off each other well, and the rest of the characters aren't too bad. They're not very deep, but none of them were unlikable, and they form a workable group/team. Shout out to Merton the Turtle, by the way, she was my favorite character.
I'm fast now, but I can't see.
So, based on everything I've said, you'd assume this movie is pretty fun and great rather than being just decent. Well, yes, it's still fun, but what holds it back from being a great movie is its story. It's a pretty bare-bones plot where Crypto has to learn to not be so self-centered and work well with others, making the film's message about teamwork super basic and dull. On top of that, so many moments in this movie are so easy to predict. For example, Crypto mentions a move he can do called the Solar Punch, where he can take out any villain with said punch. But the force of the punch will not only defeat the villain, but also defeat the hero. And since Ace's superpower is invincibility, I knew he was going to use his power to save Crypto from the effects of the Solar Punch. Predictable scenes like that happen way too much in DC League of Super Pets. The last thing I'll talk about is the humor, which is mostly hit or miss in my opinion. More times than not, you do get to see some really funny gags and some good lines of dialogue that'll make you chuckle or laugh. But on the other hand, you get occasional potty jokes and some lame pop culture references that drag the comedy down and makes it seem like this film is only made for kids. And that's the biggest problem with this movie. DC League of Super Pets feels like a film that was made for kids more than anything else, which causes the character arcs to be pretty basic and the story to be very on the nose. Thankfully though, the action scenes, the good animation, the voice cast, the likable characters, and the jokes that do land make this film enjoyable enough to be considered decent at best. You could say this movie is a good boy. You get it? Because we call dogs good boys? You get it?
Long before time had a name, the first Spinjitzu master created Ninjago.
Now we're getting to the point where the movies in the rankings start to get either bad or disappointing. And this next spot on this list is probably going to be my most controversial placement. I don't like the Lego Ninjago movie. I have my reasons. You see, I was a big fan of the original TV show. I watched it a ton as a kid and found it to be pretty enjoyable with its intriguing story, complex lore and characters, and wide variety of action scenes and powers. And when I first saw the Lego Ninjago movie back in 2017, I did like it, and I gave the film a 7 out of 10 in an old Quick Thoughts video I made back in 2019. But after watching the movie again for the sake of this ranking video, I said to myself,
wow, this is garbage. You actually like this?
I was very disheartened by how dull this film ended up being, and there's so many contributing factors as to why I feel that way. The story is very bland. You've got the father and son relationship storyline with Lloyd and Garmadon that we've seen tons of times in other movies. You've got the superhero movie cliches on full display, like trying to hide their identity to the rest of the world and going on a quest for a MacGuffin. And then you've got pretty basic family drama between Lloyd, his dad, and his mom. It's just such a generic story, and considering this is Ninjago, where it has a lot of material to work with for a feature film, what we ended up getting was pretty weak. Same goes for the characters. Lloyd's a decent lead, but he also has too many whiny moments for my liking. Garbodon feels like a copy of Lord Business, in fact he even follows a similar character arc to him. Master Wu is probably the best character in the whole film, though he doesn't get as much screen time as he should, and then the rest of the cast ranges from forgettable to underwhelming, especially the rest of the ninja. The fact that Kai, Zane, Jay, Cole, and Nia are reduced to being these one-dimensional jerks with no depth at all, and then the real version of these characters in the show are so well layered is just so upsetting. You could cut them out of the film and the movie would barely change. Well, I guess the messages about the power being inside you and working as a team would be gone, but those messages are so stale and in your face that I think the film would be better without those basic surface level themes we've seen too much. Now, even though I've been pretty mean to the LEGO Ninjago movie so far, I will give it credit for the things it does right. The animation is still stellar as ever, and not only blends well with the realistic looking environments, but also contains a good amount of fun action. And the humor has some jokes that were pretty funny, but most of them unfortunately fall flat on their brickly faces. Man, the LEGO Ninjago movie is just such a big disappointment compared to all of the other LEGO movies. It isn't super funny, the story is weak, the characters aren't all that great, and some of them can get a tad annoying, and it just isn't the same as the original show. And despite the impressive visuals and cool action, that's not enough to save this movie from being a letdown for me. It's not awful, and if you've never seen the OG series, you might get more out of this than I did, but for me, these ninjas were not able to create a good enough film. It's just really mediocre, and that's the worst thing a movie can be. The TV show was better, SMH.
Whoa, man! It's Simon Cowell!
Scoob is not a Scooby-Doo movie. It's instead a Blue Falcon movie that has the Mystery Gang as side characters. Yep, I'm jumping right into this one with my negative feelings on the film. Rather than being a Scooby-Doo origin story film, which is what it seemed like based on the opening minutes, it unfortunately isn't like that at all. And rather than focusing on the classic Scooby-Doo formula of solving mysteries and unmasking spooky monsters, it becomes this generic superhero-style movie with robots, gods, and a bunch of crazy shit. The whole thing feels unfocused and directionless, and the plot itself is painfully predictable. From the minute it begins, you can see every twist and arc coming from a mile away. None of the emotional moments feel earned due to the lackluster writing, and instead of crafting a fun adventure for everyone, this movie stuffs in a bunch of Hanna-Barbera Easter eggs, and it makes the whole movie feel corporate and unengaging. The tone and humor don't help either. This movie is trying to be cool and hip with the kids with all of the trendy and awful dialogue, pop culture references, and replacing the voice cast with celebrity actors that can't hold a candle to the OG actors makes this movie quite grating at times. Oh, and speaking of the voice actors, the characters that they voice are handled very poorly. Fred, Daphne, and Velma get sidelined and lack any development. Shaggy and Scooby are forcefully shoved into a cliche chosen one narrative that doesn't fit the characters. Blue Falcon got on my nerves with how loud and immature he was, and everyone else was forgettable, with the exception of Dick Dastardly, who ends up being an entertaining villain with understandable motives.
Dick.
And, on the topic of positive aspects of the movie, like Dick Dastardly, the animation is pretty decent. It's expressive, bright and colorful, and the film provides some energetic action every now and then. But at the same time, some of these character designs look off. Half of them don't look like they belong together in the same film. It's like every element of this film has one or two things holding it back from being positive, which is really unfortunate to see. Scoob had the potential to be great, but that potential feels wasted. Scoob's story is formulaic, the tone and comedy feels cringy and trendy, the characters range from dull to annoying, and this film ends up being a really bad setup for a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. Not even the good animation or fun action is enough to save this movie from being anything better than a bad movie. It's stuck in that C or D tier range due to how poorly made it feels. This is the first film in this ranking that I actually disliked. With the LEGO Ninjago movie, there was enough substance and good moments for that film to be considered passable, but I just can't say the same about Scoob. And the worst part? These movies only get worse from here.
I see what you're doing, LeBron. Please stop.
Look, I'm sorry, Joshua Tokes. I know you're the number one Space Jam and Space Jam 2 lover, but in my opinion, Space Jam: A New Legacy sucks. While the first Space Jam movie isn't perfect and has its obvious flaws, it's still a charmingly fun watch. But the sequel doesn't have that same charm due to how bloated, sloppy, and corporate it feels, which ends up making Space Jam 2 very boring and unfun to watch. In the original Space Jam with Michael Jordan, it was easy to follow. Michael Jordan is brought into the Looney Tunes world in order to help them win a basketball game. Pretty simple, right? But in the second movie, you've got that same story, but now add in a painfully predictable father and son conflict, where LeBron James has to learn to bond with his son, and a confusing Warner Bros. Serververse that makes everything more complicated and unnecessarily drawn out. Space Jam 2 does not need to be 2 hours long. The first film was only an hour and 20 minutes. Everything I just said about the plot is proof that this movie's writing is just awful. And the only reason this serververse nonsense exists is so that there's this video game styled aesthetic to the basketball game at the end, and so that Warner Brothers can show you all the franchises and characters they own. The amount of product placement and cameos that are crammed into this film is just ridiculous, and it makes this movie feel like a soulless commercial rather than an actual movie with artistic passion and effort put into it. It's in the same ballpark as films like Ralph Breaks the Internet, Ready Player One, and the Emoji Movie. Now, the first Space Jam isn't free from feeling corporate either, since the whole reason the Space Jam movies even exist is because they wanted to promote the Michael Jordan shoes. But Space Jam: A New Legacy has much worse product placement in my eyes. And the worst part is that the cameos add nothing to the overall story. You could have taken them out of the movie and nothing would have changed. It doesn't help either that the real characters in this film leave a lot to be desired. LeBron James is super boring since he falls into the same arcs that all dads do in the generic father and son relationship storylines, and on top of that, his acting is really bad. I know he's an athlete, so acting isn't his main thing, but at least put some effort, man.
No.
Ouch. 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 Ouch.
And then his son is frustrating since he gets so easily manipulated by the villain Algae Rhythm. LeBron's family is one-dimensional, and the Goon Squad feels very gimmicky. The only characters that I feel like are tolerable are the Looney Tunes themselves and Algae Rhythm, who's played by Don Cheadle. Not only do they provide some enjoyment, but they can also be pretty funny, unlike the rest of the movie. Bugs, Daffy, and the others have some solid gags, and Don Cheadle's overacting and cartoonish personality and goals makes him the best part of the movie. Also, the animation at some points can look really nice. I especially love the look of the Wonder Woman comic that Bugs and LeBron go through when they ask Lola to join the basketball game, and honestly, the CGI designs and animation of the Looney Tunes isn't that bad. Also, remember when everyone complained about Lola's new look? Yeah, maybe it's best we leave that discussion in the past. Anyways, aside from some moments in the animation and decent humor from Algae Rhythm and the Looney Tunes, the rest of the visuals and jokes are really bad. The 2D animated scenes feel unpolished to me, and some shots look really rough, and then the non-Looney comedy ranges from ironically funny to cringeworthy. The bad lines of dialogue, the pop culture references, and the trendy add-ons makes the humor quite unbearable. LeBron fucking dabs at one point.
Please, Dad.
No, I said please.
Uncle Malik could be here.
What happened here, man? Wang had the chance to make a follow-up to Space Jam that captures the same goofy charm as that first film did despite the obvious product placement, but instead we get a movie that has a messy and unremarkable plot, a cast of weak and sometimes unlikable characters, a collection of mostly unfunny gags, inconsistent visuals, and unnecessary cameos from Warner's other IPs. The ironically funny stuff and some bright moments from Don Cheadle's acting do prevent this movie from being unwatchable, but even with that, I still did not like Space Jam: A New Legacy. It's a disaster. An entertaining disaster? Yes, but it's still a disaster. Sorry, Joshua Tokes. Your favorite film just doesn't work for me. But hey, if you do like this movie because to you it's just dumb and stupid fun, that's totally fair. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion on something, and as long as they're respectful to others, I'm cool with people having different takes on films and TV shows. That being said, the last movie in this ranking is so awful in so many ways that if you're someone who unironically likes this bottom spot movie, I just question your tastes in movies. What is this last film, you may be asking? Well, no more time to waste. Let's just get this over with.
Disappointment in the game of life.
I don't usually show my face that much on this channel, but this is one of those rare moments where I feel like I should in order to set the mood for the film that I'm about to talk about. Because the movie at the bottom spot on this list is horrible, it's cringy, and it spits on the legacy of some of the most iconic cartoon characters ever created. This WAG movie is so bad that I think it's among some of the worst movies I've ever seen. Yeah, it's that bad. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the worst Warner Animation Group movie that I've ever seen is the 2021 Tom and Jerry movie. I f***ing hate this movie, and there are so many contributing factors as to why. But before I rip and tear this film apart, is there anything worth praising in it? Well, kinda, but that's also not saying much considering there's a caveat to each positive. You can't see it, but I'm using air quotes. On its own, the 3D animation done for Tom, Jerry, and the rest of the animals doesn't look bad. There's solid squash and stretch, and a lot of expressive character work. You can tell that the animators are talented. But at the same time, the rendering makes the visuals look unfinished, and the composition is awful. These animated characters do not blend well with the live action actors and environments. And then the other slightly positive aspect of the movie is the slapstick comedy from Tom and Jerry. When they do chase each other, it can be fun and entertaining in short bursts. However, their slapstick is nothing new, and more often than not, it gets interrupted by the human characters taking up screen time. Also, the music does not sync well with the gags, and rather than having the classical music that worked so well in the shorts and TV shows, we get unfitting hip-hop songs. See what I mean? All of those good parts of the film had some sort of caveat to them. And now that all of my positive feelings towards this movie are gone, time to talk about the shit! Also, you know this movie is going to be a train wreck when in the first minute, there's rapping pigeons and a shit joke. So, in a film called Tom and Jerry, you'd expect the movie to focus on Tom and Jerry's antics, right? And at first, it does seem to go in that direction, with Tom wanting to be a musician and Jerry looking for a new home in New York City. But don't get your hopes up, because then Tom and Jerry get sidelined for a much worse story, where we get a dreadfully boring subplot about a hotel hosting a wedding that drags on and on and on and on, which focuses entirely on human characters nobody gives a f*** about. It's a soulless, meandering plotline that has so many tired tropes and cliches shoved into it. The liar revealed plot, the third act breakup, the misunderstandings, the main character messing up at the start only to come back to solve everything at the end. It's just so frustrating to see how formulaic and god-awful the writing is. And wait, if Tom and Jerry aren't the main characters, who is? Well, we've got one of the most despicable and hateable protagonists I've ever seen in a movie, Kayla, played by Chloe Grace Moretz. She is literally the dictionary definition of a con artist, and her introductory scene has her get fired from her previous job, entering the hotel and manipulating this accomplished woman from London into leaving her interview, steals her resume, and then goes to the front desk to get a job at the hotel, all because she wanted to be involved in her favorite Instagram couple's wedding. And this is the protagonist? I think she's the antagonist. Kayla is a self-centered bitch who gets away with everything, suffers no consequences for her actions, and lies her way into every situation. Easily one of the most unlikable characters I've ever witnessed in a movie. And then the rest of the characters aren't much better, including Tom and Jerry. In the past, Tom is usually the one that causes trouble for Jerry, and then Jerry tries to get out of said trouble, all while showcasing a frenemy relationship. But in this movie, Tom is just an aspiring musician, and Jerry is just a constant dick throughout the entire movie, getting in Tom's way, stealing a bunch of shit just for himself, and forcing Tom to chase him, rather than the interactions between them causing the conflict. Like, fuck off, Jerry. I get you want a new home, but you don't need to be an asshole to achieve that goal. Usually Tom is the asshole. This baffling characterization makes Tom and Jerry pretty annoying when in other Tom and Jerry media, their antics make them likable, entertaining, and their goals clear. Okay, so the main and animated characters suck, and somehow the rest of the human cast is even worse. Terrence, played by Michael Pena, is this manager who keeps flip-flopping between being a dumb villain or a confused background character, making him quite the nuisance. The boss, played by Rob Delaney, is just a giant idiot. The groom in the couple is annoying since he has his head so far up his ass, and then everyone else is forgettable. I can't even remember the name of the bride, the chef is just a one-note angry perfectionist, and the remaining humans are only there for gag purposes. Oh, and did I forget to mention that the acting is terrible? Everyone is either underacting or overacting, and good lord, this movie has some of the worst comedic writing I've ever seen. Outside of the occasional slapstick, every attempt at a joke is insufferable. The awkward lines, the potty humor, the flossing, the references to TikTok. This film tries to be funny so much, and yet it never works, making the comedy agonizingly bad, and the tone very cringy. This movie doesn't even have any so bad it's good kind of jokes. Every attempt at making the audience laugh minus the decent slapstick is bad. Everything is bad. This movie is actual hell. It baffles me that the studio that made the Lego Movie as its first movie eventually made something like this. The 2021 Tom and Jerry movie has nothing redeeming about it. The story is predictable and drags on for far too long. The animation looks unpolished and doesn't mix well with live action. The comedy is atrocious, and the decent at best gags from Tom and Jerry isn't enough to save the humor. And then the characters are all dreadful. Tom and Jerry feel mischaracterized, and everyone else is a pain to watch, especially the leads. There is legitimately no reason to watch this movie. If you want worthwhile Tom and Jerry content, just go watch the shorts. And if you want an ironically funny film, watch the 1992 Tom and Jerry movie instead. Yes, that film also sidelines Tom and Jerry, but at least its human characters don't get on your nerves, and on top of that, the movie has its charm because of Tom and Jerry speaking. And there's a bunch of ironically funny moments. Remember this meme?
We've got to have money.
Yeah. That came from this movie. The 1992 Tom and Jerry film is an entertaining blunder. You can't say the same thing about this catastrophe. I fucking despise this movie so much, and the only reason people even remember this film nowadays is because of an infamous social media user who praises his film like as if it's the Mona Lisa, doesn't respect other people's opinions, and has horrible takes on the animation industry. And no, I'm not gonna say the name of this infamous user. They don't deserve it. Like I said at the beginning of this segment, this is among the worst movies I've ever seen. It's not the absolute worst since there's no gross fetish humor like in Marmaduke or the Sandy Cheeks movie, and there's no blatant product placement like in the aforementioned Space Jam 2, among others. But at the end of the day, it's still a terrible film that's as bad as those other movies for taking these legacy characters and dragging them through a pile of dog shit. Literally.
How many burritos did you eat?
The 2021 Tom and Jerry movie is completely worthless. Do not ever watch it. Even if you're mildly curious, don't do it, because you're gonna save yourself from 101 minutes of pure torture. Well, there you have it. That's my ranking of every Warner Animation Group movie ranked from best to worst. If these films were put on a tier list, it'd look like this, with the Lego Movie at the top and Tom and Jerry at the very bottom. If I were to describe the overall quality of WAG's film output, it's like a roller coaster, full of some of the highest highs and lowest lows I've seen in film, with a mixture of decent and mediocre movies in the middle. Sadly, I do think Warner Animation Group's first few films were better than their more recent projects, but maybe under their new name and direction, that can all change. The Cat in the Hat looks like it could be fun, and I'm really glad Coyote vs. Acme is finally getting released. So I'm intrigued to see how WAG will do now that they're called Warner Bros. Pictures Animation, and hopefully we can see even more great films from this mainstream animation studio. Anyways, that's all I've got to say here at the end, folks. If you guys ended up enjoying this video, I'd love for you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell to make sure you get notified when a new video comes out. The support is greatly appreciated as always. And let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts are on all of the Warner Animation Group movies, and tell me if you'd like to see another big ranking video like this from me. This video alongside the Alvin and the Chipmunks ranking are some of my favorite videos I've made on the channel, so I would love to keep these ranking videos going for you guys. And with all that said, thank you all so much for watching the video, and I'll see you guys later.
Good night, everybody.